Case interview frameworks is one of the most searched for keywords in all of consulting prep. In fact, it's one of the core concepts in case interviews that every candidate has got to understand really well. But it's been very frustrating for me that there are so many different misconceptions about this important topic and that nobody out there has stood up to provide some clarity on it. Welcome to our Case Interview Frameworks video, the comprehensive guide to aligning your path to master this important topic. Hi, my name is Kim Tran, a former McKinsey consultant and the founder of the platform Management Consulting Prep. I can't wait to share with you the insights that I've gathered from years of experience in management consulting and case interview coaching. Let's get started. First of all, what is a case interview framework? If you haven't already done so, I strongly encourage you to watch our Case Interview 101 video. Though we just briefly explain what a framework is, it's important to see where this concept fits into the overall picture of case interview prep. Anyway, in simple language, frameworks are like standard templates that we use to structure and to break down common business problems. Since it's a template, it's usually very well organized and written. However, as you know, a template won't fit every situation. You have to choose templates for different purposes and sometimes even customize them. Okay, so now that we know what a framework is, let's talk about some of those misconceptions. Myth number 1, the more frameworks I know, the better. People feel like the more frameworks they know, the less chance they'd have of facing a case without a specific framework that fits it. While one aspect of this idea is true, there's a real danger in having this mindset. These people tend to rely too much on what they memorized and pay less attention to the specific context. This then results in them getting trapped in some fixed framework, ignoring important data, or even going into irrelevant areas of the case. When I was interviewing with the Big Three, I only studied several building blocks frameworks. I emphasized more on the ability to draw specific frameworks suitable to each context. By doing this, I'm well prepared for anything that the interviewer might throw at me. Myth number 2, there must be a framework out there that fits this case. The truth is, there are a lot of cases to which no framework ever built can be applied. Try this case, for example. Higher education exporting holds an important weight in Australia's economy. Most higher education institutions in Australia place an important focus on attracting international students. However, the percentage of international students has actually been decreasing for the last 5 years. The Australian government would like to hire a McKinsey team to tackle this problem. I would argue that no conventional framework ever built can be used to tackle this case specifically. A new framework, or at least a fair amount of customization, is needed in a case like this. So if I just rely solely on what I memorize about existing frameworks, I can't imagine getting a case like this in a real interview. Myth number 3, the fancier the framework, the more impressed the interviewers become. In actual fact, whether or not a framework is fancy is none of their concern. What would impress them is an appropriate framework that really applies to the provided context. A McKinsey partner in the Singapore office once told me that nothing is more annoying than interviewing people trying to show off their knowledge by using complicated but inappropriate frameworks. Now, you may wonder, what are some frameworks considered fancy that you should avoid using? Well, I would answer by saying that as long as it's applicable and suitable to the situation, nothing is too fancy. So a better question would be, what is considered inappropriate? Let's look at some bad examples of inappropriate frameworks that I've seen used blindly for the Australian case above. A, the STP framework, segmenting, targeting, and positioning. This framework is more suitable for market research cases where the client wants to investigate the best segment to attack. B, a McKinsey 7S model, strategy, structure, staffing, style, skills, system, shared value. This framework is better for an individual organization or company, not a whole industry such as this case. Myth number 4. The ability to draw frameworks is only relevant to the candidate-led format. In interviewer-led cases, I'm not driving, so why should I need the map? The truth is, in interviewer-led cases, the interviewer may ask framework questions. This is actually very common. These framework questions can be asked in some different formats, like the following. What factors would I consider to, or what should you investigate to determine? Basically, what's being asked is really, can you show me the freaking framework? Not only that, most other questions in interviewer-led cases require you to structure your answer. This is somewhat like you have to have a mini framework for each question. So yes, case interview frameworks. You can't run away from them. To summarize through these myths, we talked about 4 important messages. 1, knowing how to draw frameworks is more important than knowing a lot of frameworks. 2, be ready to tackle cases where no conventional framework can be applied. 3, try to use appropriate frameworks, not fancy ones. And 4, you cannot escape this. You need frameworks in every case. Now that we've covered some big misconceptions about frameworks, let's learn some of it. What are some good building block frameworks that I should study? For the scope of this video, we only briefly touch on the overall concept. For a detailed explanation, please refer to our website or the PDF attached below. You can also find some really interesting examples of how different frameworks are appropriately used for different cases in our Case Interview End-to-End Secret program. We devote a whole ebook in the intuition part for this. Let's start with a few frameworks. And remember, since these are building block frameworks, they should be understood and used with flexibility. We will start with some comprehensive ones and then move to some more generic forms. Comprehensive framework number 1, the profitability framework. The spirit behind this well-known framework is to mathematically break down profit until you've gathered enough information to conclude or to switch to a more qualitative framework. Specifically in this framework, we break down profit mathematically into revenue and cost. Then, revenue can be mathematically split up into price and unit sales, while total cost can be divided into fixed cost and variable cost. And say, if the problem is in fixed costs, we further break down these into cost components like overhead, salary, rental, etc. Even further, let's suppose that the problem is actually in HR cost. We can even break that down into 2 possibilities. Is the company hiring more than they need, or is it paying too much for the people that they have? Usually, this is the point where you either conclude the problem or switch to another framework to search for the root cause. If we are hiring more than we need, why? Is it caused by some external force, or is it caused by the company itself, etc.? Comprehensive framework number 2, 3C and P. This is an extension from the famous 3C, customer, company, and competition. The P stands for product. Of all the frameworks ever developed, this is probably the most comprehensive and applicable. This can be applied to almost all cases. Yet, like most things in life, there are always 2 sides of the same coin. Along with its applicability is its unfortunate generic nature. A really high level of customization and flexibility is needed to successfully use this framework. I have seen so many candidates mechanically apply this framework without thorough consideration of the specific situation that they're trying to apply it to. Let's look at an example. Let's say following the use of the profitability framework, we found out that our client company is paying their people too much. Now, how are we going to incorporate the 3C&P framework into this situation? Most inexperienced candidates just blindly bring 4 elements in. They ask me to describe the customers, their needs, how to segment them, their preferred distribution channels, etc. Now, if we take a step back and really think about this, is knowing more about the customers that much helpful here? Does it help find out why the client company is paying their employees too much? The answer is very little, if any. Candidates would be much better off not spending time in this area. If I'm going to use the 3C and P here, I would customize it in the following way. Branch 1, internal factors in the company itself. For branch 2, I twist the competition aspect of it a little bit. I would explore external factors outside the company, its competitors, and other market forces. Comprehensive framework number 3, McKinsey M&A framework. There's actually no official name for this framework, but since it's so widely used at McKinsey for merger and acquisition projects, I just call it the McKinsey M&A framework. The framework is developed to answer the key question: what do we need to know to find out if this is a good M&A or not? Turns out there are 3 major buckets that fit within this framework. First, how the targeted company is doing. What's their values, core strengths and weaknesses, etc. The term we at McKinsey often refer to this bucket is the standalone value of the targeted company. Second, is it a good fit? Together, is the whole better than the sum of each individual company, and the official term for this is synergy. The third bucket is for any other miscellaneous factors such as feasibility, culture fit, legal issues, etc. Mini framework number 1. External and internal. This is one of the most popular mini frameworks out there. When you need instant structure or when you're not sure which approach to use, breaking down factors into external and internal groups is a really good place to start. The internal often refers to the company itself, but sometimes it can refer to individuals, a department, or an entity. The external then refers to anything outside of that entity. Mini framework number 2, qualitative and quantitative. Though it can be widely used in various contexts for instant structure, this framework is particularly good at structuring reasons and evaluations. For example, let's say in the middle of an M&A analysis you are evaluating the standalone value of company A. How are you going to structure your analysis? A very good way is to divide your work into 2 groups. You would look at quantitative factors like profit, growth rate, leverage, etc. Then on top of these, you would add the qualitative factors like brand name, capability, etc. Mini framework number 3, cost and benefit. Like other mini frameworks, this one can be applied in many different contexts. However, the cost and benefit framework is particularly helpful in decision making. Let's look at a simple example. Should I subscribe to the M Consulting Prep newsletter? Well, let's compare the cost and benefit of that. On the cost side, we have a one-time 15-second use to sign up with your email address, which is relatively small compared to how much time we waste on TV or Facebook every day. In addition to that is probably a certain proportion of our inbox, which is free anyway, and that's about it. On the benefit side, we have access to regular insights and knowledge that significantly improve our performance in recruiting processes. We are reminded regularly about our goal to become a consultant someday, which also translates to a higher chance of not giving up. We get free study tips that will eventually save us a lot more time than crawling on our own. We can stay even to the competition as there are already thousands of candidates around the world reading these newsletters every day. Now, if I'm to compare these benefits with those costs, as long as I'm a normal and rational person, I would definitely choose yes. Mini framework number 4, BCG 2x2 framework. Lastly, we would like to introduce you to not exactly a framework, but since it's so popular, we'll put it in here anyway. It's the BCG 2x2 analysis. Let's say we have 5 business lines, and we would like to focus on just a few based on 2 factors: how profitable they are and how much intangible benefit they are creating for the company. We would then draw a scatter plot-like diagram, put the 2 evaluating factors on 2 axes, give it a scale, then place 5 business lines into it. Now the picture tells us hopefully a better story on how we should deal with those 5 lines. Sometimes even before placing the 5 dots onto the plot, we identify upfront the nature of the 4 areas. The top right corner can be called superstar. The bottom left corner is consider closing. The top left corner is for lines to focus in capital constrained period, while the bottom right corner contains lines only kept for socially focused and financially sound companies. Well, I wish I could keep going as there are a lot more insights I can give on case interview frameworks, but for the scope of this already long video, we just touched on those most basic concepts and examples. Make sure you also look at the detailed PDF attached below. You'll find detailed components and user manuals for a lot more frameworks. Also, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel for a lot more coming up. If you wish to look at examples of real cases and how different frameworks are used, you're welcome to join me and hundreds of other candidates around the world in our Case Interview End-to-End Secrets program. Hope to see you there. Now, I'll end this video on a different note. If you're new to case interview prep, these concepts can be difficult and confusing. It's very important to be patient and to try to get a little better at this every day. Everything is hard until you know how to do it. At Management Consulting Prep, we believe everybody can make it to consulting. Are you a believer?